This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching our Lucas Ross Sports channel. It's time for week number 6 of Upset Alert for the 2022 college football season. Looking back to last week, there weren't really a lot of upsets on my list that were most likely or most dislikely to be an upset, but last week, Kentucky versus Ole Miss, that proved to be an upset. Michigan versus Iowa, that game proved to be Michigan's way. And then you had some other games that we didn't put on the list. You had Washington versus UCLA. That game ended up being an upset. UCLA, of course, they're undefeated. And pretty much we didn't have a lot of upsets, last week. But week number 5 was pretty, surprising. There were some upsets that happened, some games that were blowouts. Oklahoma also got blown out against TCU. I think that game was not on our list as well. So, we had a pretty much, big week last week, and now this week I think is going to be more wide open since conference play is starting to begin, and we also have more, game and more teams getting a lot better. So we'll get into this and how this video works. I will give you 4 games each, most likely to be an upset, most not likely, and the spread has to be single digits to most likely to be an upset, and if it's in double digits, that's most not likely to be an upset. We'll start with the 4 games that are most not likely to be an upset. And we'll begin with this one. It's in the Pac-12. It's Washington State and USC. USC at 5-0. This game is at 7:30 this Saturday on Fox in Los Angeles. USC favored by 13 points, and the over and under is at 66. Basically, I would say that USC is favored by more points in this game than they were last game. But, USC and Washington State, this is going to be a pretty good matchup. Washington State's getting a little bit better as a team. We've seen Washington State upset a top 25 team this year, and that was Wisconsin. And speaking of Wisconsin, they just fired their head coach this past week, so it's really interesting what Washington State can do in this game. But it's on the road. I really don't see Washington State pulling off a big win here. The over-under is at 66, so USC, they're favored by at least a touchdown or maybe a couple touchdowns. So, I don't really expect USC to be a big loss here in this game because it is at home. I think they will stay undefeated. Let's go to the second game now. And we stay in the Pac-12. It's Oregon and Arizona. I know people are not going to agree on this one, but this is most likely probably to be an upset. Arizona has upset Oregon a lot in the past, but Oregon, they're 4-1. This game is at 9 o'clock p.m., so it's a late night game. This is on the Pac-12 network, which is really interesting. I thought this would be probably an ESPN game. And this one is on the road for Oregon. Oregon favored by 13, same as USC in their game, and the over and under is at 70. So they got Oregon favored by a couple touchdowns in this game, perhaps. But Arizona, I think this is a team that you don't want to sleep on. They have a veteran, experienced team. Oregon, though, we've seen them get better ever since that Georgia loss, in the first week of the college football season. They're looking really good as a top 15 team now. And they still have a chance to make the college football playoff. Don't really sleep on this Oregon team. But this game right here, if I was going to make a prediction, I would still predict Oregon to win this one. Of course, I picked them in the regular season and win that one. And in the last upset alert, I had USC defeating Washington State in the regular season. So I will make some predictions here going down this list. Let's go to the third game now. And that is in the SEC. It's Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. Now, I know people are going to be pretty surprised about this one. This game is, at 4 p.m. on the SEC network in Nashville. Vanderbilt Ole Miss is favored by 18 points, and then the over and under is at 62. So they're favored in Ole Miss here by about a touchdown, which is really surprising to me. That's why I had to put it on this list. Ole Miss, though, they're coming off a big win against Kentucky this past Saturday. 3-point win there. Vanderbilt coming off a, terrible loss, a blowout loss to Alabama on the road. Now, Vanderbilt's been pretty good at times. We've seen them, struggle in the past 2 games, and, against Wake Forest and now Alabama. And, people are probably saying this is where Vanderbilt's season starts to fall apart, but you never know. Vanderbilt's been kind of better ever since they got into that first game of the season, but we'll just have to find out. But I'll pick Ole Miss on this game if I was going to make a prediction on this one. So I'm going with the Rebels. Let's go to the last game that is not likely to be an upset. And that is this one. It's South Carolina and Kentucky. Kentucky was on our list last weekend. They lost to Ole Miss on the road. They're probably going to have redemption in this one. This game is also on the SEC network, so they have an SEC doubleheader right after that. This one's in Lexington. Kentucky's favored by 10.5 points. and the over and under is at 49. So they're pretty much calling this one a defensive game. I mean, I could see it being a defensive game because South Carolina has a pretty good defense. Kentucky has a really good defense as well. Kentucky, though, I think defensively they have the advantage since it is a home game for Kentucky. But we've seen Kentucky and South Carolina have great matchups in the past. I mean, this is going to be a good one. Kentucky could potentially lose this game. You never know. I mean, they could potentially lose this game. South Carolina are coming off 2 big losses, so far this year. One to Arkansas and one to Georgia. So they had a bye week this past week to really, get back into that caliber. Actually, they didn't have a bye week. They won in their, matchup against, I think it was another South Carolina team. Let's go to the games now that are most likely to be an upset, and we'll start with this first one. It's Tennessee and LSU. First time these two teams meeting since 2017, and I think this is the first matchup in Baton Rouge in a long time coming. Probably like 2006, I believe. And I think Tennessee won that game. It's a noon game here on ESPN. I'm kind of not surprised it is a CBS game after all. But this one, Tennessee is favored by 3, so they're favored by a field goal, and the over and under is at 63.5. Tennessee, though, I'm really surprised they're favored in this game. I mean, LSU, I thought they would be favored by at least a field goal, perhaps, because it is home field advantage, and it's a tough place to play in Death Valley. But we've seen LSU get better. We've seen LSU get better ever since that Florida State loss. They come alive with Brian Kelly. I mean, this is a team that is just coming off that emotional win in the first game of the season, but they've coming off really strong with a winning streak. Tennessee, though, on the other hand, bye week, last week. How do they repeat after, winning against Florida? I mean, a back-to-back game against LSU now, and, they're wearing the smoky gray uniforms this weekend, and I can't wait for that one. I love smoky gray uniforms. And if you guys didn't know, I am a Tennessee fan. If you watch my channel so far, I am a Tennessee fan. Not right like a big fan, but I am a Tennessee fan. But if I was going to make a prediction on this one, I would pick LSU to win this one because it is a home field advantage game, and I did pick LSU to win in the regular season. Let's go to the second game now that is most likely to be an upset. And this is going to be a good one. It's in the Big 12. It's TCU and Kansas. TCU, they're coming off that bye week, 2 weeks ago, and then they come off that big win against Oklahoma at home. And then for Kansas, same thing for Kansas. They're 5-0, coming off that big-time win, an upset, big-time. They've had some big upsets this year. Kansas is ranked for the first time in a long time. Kansas with that big win over Duke, and then, get a big win in the Big 12 against Iowa State. So, I mean, both of these teams are pretty even. This game's at noon, and it's on Fox Sports 1, which is really surprising to me. I thought it would be at least an ESPN game, and maybe a college game day type game as well. I mean, this game right here is going to be interesting in the Big 12. And TCU, though, they're favored by a touchdown. I mean, I'm really surprised that this TCU team is favored. I thought they would give Kansas, the advantage because it is at home. But maybe they like this TCU offense more than the Kansas offense. The over and under is at 68, so I mean, it's pretty much a touchdown favorite for TCU. But if I was going to make a prediction on this one, I know I predict TCU to win in the offseason, but I got to go with Kansas. I think they are, the team that really surprises a lot of people in this game, and also they can make a run, for an undefeated season. Let's go to the third game now that is most likely to be an upset, and it's in the Pac-12. It's Utah and UCLA. UCLA 5-0. Utah is 4-1. This game's at 3:30 p.m. on Fox. This one, Utah is favored by 4.5, and then the over and under is at 65. So I'm pretty, surprised that Utah, the over and under is at 65 because, Utah has got one loss on the year. UCLA is undefeated. And this is also a rival game, which is really interesting. UCLA coming off that big-time upset over Washington at home. Utah, I know they lost to Florida early in the year, but this is a team that is starting to build momentum. Same thing with Oregon. I mean, after losing to a SEC opponent, they're starting to get better as a team. Same thing with Oregon. But if I was going to make a prediction on this game, UCLA, I would pick them to win. But, I picked Utah to beat them in the regular season. But I would pick UCLA to win this game if I was going to make a prediction on this one this weekend, if I was going to make my change into these predictions. But this one right here, it's going to be really interesting. The Pac-12, UCLA versus Utah. If Utah would have won that game against Florida early in the year, this would be an undefeated matchup, a top 25 matchup, and perhaps a college game day. Let's go to the third game now. Or actually, I think this is the last game. It's BYU and Notre Dame. BYU, they're starting to get better. They've been a little quiet in the past couple weeks after winning that game, against, or actually losing on the road at Oregon after getting blown out of that game. Notre Dame, they're starting to get better as a team. They had a bye week this past week, so I mean, they're literally looking good. This game is on NBC. It's at 7:30. It's in Las Vegas, so it's a neutral site game. And Notre Dame is favored by 3.5. I mean, it's a neutral site game. It's hard to predict if it was a neutral site game. And the over and under is at 52. So, I mean, it's a 50-50 game. And I could see this one being a 50-50 game. I'm not saying it's probably going to be a, shootout type game, though. I'm saying it's a defensive battle. I would choose BYU to win this game. I think they're well experienced enough to beat Notre Dame if I was going to make a prediction on this one. I think I did predict, BYU to beat Notre Dame in the regular season, maybe. But I think Notre Dame, I picked them probably. But ever since that loss to Ohio State and that loss to Marshall, Notre Dame's gotten better. BYU, they've been a little bit quiet, but I think they'll really get back to winning ways, and they'll start to really, wake up more. And those are the upset alert type games I have for this week, here in week number 6 of the 2022 college football season. Let me guys know what you think down in the comments below, what games that I should have put of. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.